Hey man, welcome to the show.
Hey Ray, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing all right. Managing to stay sane, I guess, as best as possible.
Yeah, that's the key during this time.
Yeah,
Um, awesome. Well, if you would like to just introduce yourself to the audience, that would be great.
sure. My name's Donnie Burtless. In 2009, I started a blog called Buffalo Eats, where me and my wife and some friends of ours, but mostly me and my wife, would go around Buffalo, New York, and trying out new food. And um, it started as really a I guess a catalog of things I was trying for the first time. I was a notorious picky eater as a child and as like a young adult. A chicken fingers and French fries kind of eater who didn't venture out. But I one of my best friends is Lebanese, and I remember going to his friend's house to I remember going to his house and having dinner, and my mind being blown by just something as simple as lebne, which is literally just a yogurt dip. And it's really not that exciting, but it was literally one of those instances. And he was at the time really into Anthony Bourdain's No Reservation. So it was like that light bulb moment of understanding that food that I just assumed I hated, I probably didn't. And watching one of the coolest people I thought at the time talk about how cool it is to try new foods, that we were like, let's run a food blog. And at the time, there wasn't anything like that in Buffalo. Um, and so the food blog just started as that. It was me, checking off things I wanted to try for the first time, and in retrospect, having the balls to pretend like I could critique any of this food. I really wasn't like a harsh critic or anything, but looking back, the fact that I thought I could try sushi for the first time and then have the audacity to try to critique it, I guess, is mind blowing, and I can't believe more people didn't call me out for that. But over time, we got our palates developed. We had a bigger idea of what we were trying, and we wrote, I don't know, probably 2,000 quote unquote reviews. We did a
Wow.
podcast for 2 years straight where we recorded every week. So we did a podcast for about 110 episodes of interviewing chefs and writers and brewers and anybody we could get into our basement to talk about what they did. Um, and then we did another podcast after that for about 60 episodes. So it was something that started as a hobby. It never made money. It was never a business venture, but it was always something that we loved to do because we loved talking about Buffalo and talking about our restaurant scene. Um, and yeah, we had our 11th anniversary in February of the website. So it's thank you. It's
Congratulations.
it's weird because we started as a blog, and I don't think in 2020 a lot of people are reading blogs so much these days. If you probably asked anyone under the age of 25 about Buffalo Eats, they would think it's a very fun Instagram account, and I don't know if they even realize that there's a website that's still alive that has thousands and thousands of posts on it. But um, I used to have issues with that, but I feel like I've come to terms with it. So,
I want to go back to the blog because I mean, you're kind of correct in that I don't read many
yeah,
blogs. To be 22 years old and in the industry, obviously knowing what Buffalo Eats is, but so like with the blogs, what was that like before having all this audio? For me, when I started getting into food media, podcasts were already kind of a thing, and I had the audio, and then I also had the blog. So for a lot of media sites, I have this option, like I can go either read the content or I can go listen to it. But back in 2009, like you were saying, obviously it was more so focused on
yeah.
writing. What do you think, like, set your writing apart, or what do you think it was about the way your team wrote that kind of captured the attention of people who like food in Buffalo?
So in 2009, um, for Buffalo food writing, there really were only a couple options. So you had the Buffalo News, the major newspaper in town, which at the time Janice Oken was still the lead reviewer. And Janice Oken is a legendary food critic in Buffalo, but she is also at the time in her probably her late 70s and um, was not connecting with younger people in Buffalo that well. I guess is the most politically minded way to say that. And she was fine. You know, I've met Janice. We had her on our podcast. She's a firecracker of a woman and is very entertaining. But I think Buffalo News needed a new spin on how they're presenting food coverage. It was very old school, and so and then the other one was Buffalo Spree, which is a magazine which was doing good work, but it's a magazine, so everything's 3 months out and written before it even
Mm-hmm.
gets to your face. So what we had with Buffalo Eats the blog was we were the first people on the scene. If something new was opening, we were going the first day, and we were posting pictures, and it would be up the next morning. We were one of the first people to really embrace Twitter. I mean, our Twitter account we started in 2009, and we were when you joined Twitter and you're in Buffalo and you put in Buffalo as like searching accounts, we were in that first result. So
Nice.
we just really I mean, a lot of that is just timing. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
lucked into some of that stuff that was the time when we could really make a name for ourselves just by sheer, word of mouth. We never spent a dollar on advertising. It was all people who saw us and people sharing our articles. And I think as far as people who liked us, we just never took ourselves that seriously. We were pretty open that like we were a bunch of people who didn't know anything about food and we're trying to figure it out on the fly. And our first kind of mission statement was, we were people who only ate at TGI Fridays, and now look at us and we love this stuff. This could be you. That was kind of always the thing, is like we were the people who were afraid to try things, but now like this is our favorite thing in the world to do, and to try to break down any of those I don't know, those people who just were afraid to jump out there and try something new. And in 2009, Buffalo's food scene wasn't anywhere near as exciting as it is today, and you really had to convince people to go downtown and try a new restaurant. You really had to show them pictures of it. This is 2009. This is early iPhone pictures and things like that. We used all of that. It sounds crazy to say this now, but like in 2009, we were taking pictures of our food while we were eating, and people would stare. Like people would turn and look and be like, "Why are they using a flash to take a picture of their food?" Like servers would come over and like ask if we were okay, if there was something wrong with the food. It sounds crazy now because I don't think you could go to a restaurant and not see people taking pictures of food, and that's not even like an age thing. I mean, like my in-laws who are in their 60s love to take pictures of their food when they're at restaurants. Everybody does now, and so in 2009 it was just we were the black sheep. We were the ones sticking out, but because of phones and digital cameras, we were able to get those first photos. We didn't have anyone that we had to run it by to make sure we could post it. It was me and my
Yeah.
wife, and I'm a horrible writer, so she would kind of make sure anything I wrote sounded it made sense. But yeah, that was kind of how we started off, and we developed a pretty good following right away.
That's awesome. I mean, I think it's so cool. I wish. I get jealous when I hear stories like that because I wish I was there when like Twitter started. It was really cool to like, have a written app based on writing and kind of getting your thoughts out there. I know like the newest app right now is TikTok, and for me, I don't know,
Yes.
I just don't connect with it as much. But I know it's I've seen a lot of chef driven content that does great on it, so I can't knock it. But so I guess my next question then is, as Buffalo Eats started to grow, when did you? I guess I want to get into two things. The first question being, when did you start to notice it taking off slash chefs kind of realizing how powerful it was becoming? And then when did you kind of see Buffalo start to flip into that, the scene we have today? Like when did those two moments kind of occur for you?
Sure. So it definitely took us a while to get a real good footing. Um, so we started in February 2009. I would say by the end of 2010, we were starting to at least get on the radar of some people. And I only knew that because we were starting to get invited to, traditional press events, things that, the Buffalo News and locally Buffalo Rising, which was a magazine and then turned into a blog, we're getting invited to. And then we started seeing those same invites coming our way. A new restaurant opening or a press release and things like that. And that's when I started to realize that like people were actually reading what we were typing, and also just looking at our page views on WordPress. We were by the end of 2010, I want to say we were up to like 300 readers a day, which
Wow.
at the time was like blowing my mind that we could do that. Because honestly, I know everyone says this. I honestly just started it as a way for myself to keep track of what we were doing. I never thought that anyone would care in any way. And then I remember in 2010, the first chef that I ever really met was actually Ross Warhol, your former boss. He we asked him. We started doing interviews where we would send like a generic like 6 questions to people, and it was a way for us to interview people, and we would email them, and it was just easier to get people to do it because they would see 6 questions, respond, and then we'd have a blog post the next day about what their favorite restaurants were growing up and all this other stuff. And Ross did that. We asked him to do an interview. He was very gracious. He was like super appreciative of it, and he invited me and my wife to a dinner he was doing, and
Nice.
we could not believe that we were getting comped passes to what was probably a very expensive dinner at the Anthonyum Hotel. And we were just like, this is not happening. This is crazy. And then I remember we sat at the dinner. It was amazing. It was like a farm to table dinner, which in 2010 was still relatively new and not, at least in Buffalo, not like a chic thing that everybody is doing. Um, and he we sat with a woman whose brother worked for like Jose Andres, and she like introduced herself to like Ross, and they were trying to talk, and he like excused himself and came over and was like, Donnie, I just want to thank you for doing that interview. It really meant a lot. And I was just like, I can't believe this is happening right now. It was amazing. So that was like our coming out like moment where we were like, okay, maybe this has some weight in the chef community. Maybe anybody cares that we're trying to do this kind of thing. Um, and then from there it just exploded. We started, especially with the podcast. You're having chefs over to your house, and the podcast lasts for 45 minutes, but then you find yourself drinking for another 3 hours and talking and getting to know people, and then you just start to find yourselves in the same circles. And so I mean, very quickly after that, like my social circle went from the friends that I had to primarily people in the industry, and that I feel like that happened super quickly. And I would
Nice.
say, as far as like the restaurant scene, uh, I'd probably 2014, 2013 were the years where huge changes started to happen. That was when you saw developers throw tons of money into rehabbing buildings downtown. Before that, anytime a new restaurant opened, it was either on Elmwood Village, which is like a trendy area in Buffalo, that's a
Mm-hmm.
little like upper class, or it was in the burbs. And right around I guess 2013 or so, that's when you started seeing these just like, hey, here's a 150-year-old building downtown. Let's throw a ton of money into it, renovate it, and put a kitchen in it. And and all of a sudden, people are like actually excited to go downtown to eat dinner, if they weren't going to like a Sabres game or a theater production. And
Yeah.
I remember going to the Hotel Lafayette when Mike Andrzejewski opened his like really fine dining restaurant. Like it was a big deal that like there was going to be a real sit down, kind of prefix but not fully prefix menu, And I remember sitting. I was very fortunate enough to get invited to like a preview tasting, and I remember sitting in there and thinking like, wow, like this is like Buffalo is like legit, and this is something that like I will be proud to tell people about. And then it seemed like after that happened, more and more people wanted to start opening restaurants downtown, and a lot of like chef owned restaurants, which is always very important. Um,
Yeah.
and from there, it kind of has been rolling. I would say in the last couple of years, it's definitely decreased. You know, for a period of time, it seemed like every year there was 15 exciting restaurants that were open, and now I'd say that that number is definitely scaled back. But from 2013 to 2017, it just seemed like it was nonstop.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it before starting the podcast, and it's a point I kind of wanted to get into. And I guess in relation to you as well. So, like for me, growing up in the Buffalo region, like I said, I'm only 22 years old, and growing up, it was like, I almost had this urge that I needed to get out, um, and just not really seeing what Buffalo had to offer. Going into high school, going into vocational school, cooking, and not even knowing like what our city had. It was actually when I got back from my first year of college at the Culinary Institute of America that I remember I was cutting grass. I had reached out to Ross because another chef of mine who's been a mentor to me is Cody Castiglia, who's no longer working
Oh
in the
yeah.
city. Yeah, he's great. He connected me with Ross, and I was waiting to go meet Ross, and I had actually listened to your podcast. And when I found out that you did a podcast with Ross, I listened to it, obviously, loved it. And I noticed that you had like podcasts with all these different chefs, producers, all these different people from the Buffalo area, and I had no idea. And it was almost just like it was literally like finding treasure. It was like I had no idea this existed in the city I grew up in. And so, I mean, did you run into that a lot with people in Buffalo as the decade from 2010 to 2020 kind of continued on, or what was your reaction first from the people following Buffalo Eats when they started to see everything happening in the city?
Um, I think there was a couple of moments where um, for one is when we started Buffalo Eats, I was literally learning on the fly. I was trying to find out about a like the chef culture, b different cuisines. I was trying to like learn all these things as it was happening in front of me and as we were covering it, and um, it was really tricky. And what we started seeing was things that I would geek out about, that I would feel like, oh, finally, I've been reading about this on Eater in Chicago and New York City forever. I can't believe this is going to be in our backyard. And for me, it would be exciting. And then we would post it on, social media, mostly Twitter or Facebook, and you'd see other people really excited about it. And the one I can think of right off the top of my head is Lloyd, the taco truck. They opened in 2010, and I remember finding out about it and being like, guys, like there's a taco truck coming. Uh, they're not doing they're not doing Taco Tuesday at home with like Ortega and lettuce. Like these are like, corn tortillas and cabbage and like, kind of California esque tacos. It sounds crazy, but in 2010 was nowhere to be seen in this city. Um, and I got super pumped about it. I was like, I wonder if anyone's going to care. Like, Buffalo had never had a food truck, and so I remember we were covering it a lot on Twitter, and we just saw the reaction. And obviously, there's a million reasons they blew up. It's not because we wrote about it, but the people who followed us, anytime we posted anything about Lloyd, it was always our number one story, or it was our number one post that day, or um, people would just freak out about it if there was a new menu, if they were going to do an event, um, and watching that, to see other people who are excited about things like that could nerd out with me, um, really started to make me feel better about the future of Buffalo's dining scene. And I guess the other early one would be Vera, which I want to say they opened in 2011, and they were the first real craft cocktail bar in Buffalo. And they looked cool. All the bartenders looked like rock stars. Again, I have to preface, this is 2011. I know every place in the world has a craft cocktail program, and everybody's wearing vests, and every city has a speakeasy at this point. But in 2011, like that didn't exist, and we were super pumped about it. I remember the first time I walked in there, and I was like, the stereotypical, like, I feel like I'm in Brooklyn. Like, this doesn't feel like Buffalo. This feels like I just stepped into a place in Brooklyn, and we were super pumped about it. And I was like, I hope other people are going to be excited. It was $10 cocktails, which people like could not believe was like the price of how to get a drink. And sure enough, people started really freaking out every time we posted anything about that. That was like the number one place. It's like, when are they going to open? When are they going to open? People were like, they were addicted to like any news we had about that place.
Yeah.
And just those were early, but just watching us be excited about it, and then see that kind of reflected against us, in our audience, to see them also so excited. That was how I knew there was an appetite for this kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
this
no,
is what
that's
when
cool.
the term foodie is starting. So everybody called themselves a foodie. In Buffalo, because they liked to find different things that weren't available here.
That's awesome. I mean, that idea of people finding things, and obviously, the city, things were just starting to kind of come into their own place. And then you fast forward to, like you were saying, 2014, when you started to notice things like change or things that get bigger. I guess what was the dining scene like then, between like 2014 to like 2018, in terms of growth, and also like obviously with Buffalo Eats? Like, what did you find yourself covering more of, and what did you see? Like, did you see the palette of like people of Buffalo kind of morph as new options came in, or what did you notice through your lens of Buffalo Eats?
Um, I think I noticed, things that we took, you know, whenever we'd write a story and it was like a chef that we really, admired and respected would open a new place, we would always try to put front and forward their names. Or if they're, in you read other cities coverage of restaurants, and I'm not sure if you're a football fan, but in
Oh
football,
yeah,
when a coach gets successful, they have the coaching tree, right? And so all of their assistant coaches are now considered valuable talent to become a head coach themselves. And so there's that thought that the guy at the top is really successful, and the people who work underneath them are also super talented, and then they get their own chances. And we were trying to really emphasize that kind of thing with like chefs. You know, when there would be a sous chef who I knew was a really talented cook in another restaurant, we would always try to promote their names out there to really get people to know who was in the kitchens, and try to not make celebrity chefs, but to make some of these chefs, household names. For basically, Mike A, who the godfather of Buffalo cooking, was really the only household name. And we were trying to make people like Ross and Ed Forrester and Steve Gedra and James Roberts and Jennifer Boy. Um, we were trying to make these people household names because they were super talented. And you should know when they were going to open a new restaurant, because that meant that you should go there. Um, and and so that from 2014 to 2018 is, I think, when people really started to pay attention to when a chef was doing a pop-up that they really appreciated, and they would go out of their way for. And I guess you could say the same about farms. There are certain farms that just have better produce than other farms locally, and there's prestige farms, I guess you could say. If you see an Oles family farm anything on a menu, like, I'm going to order it regardless of what that dish is, because their farm is amazing, and they only
hmm
let a certain amount of restaurants use it. And we started to see that name recognition with our audience. They started to pay attention to that kind of thing, um, and it was great. I mean, it was finally, it felt like and I only been in it for 5 years, and there was people way before me, Krista Glennie of Buffalo Spree and Buffalo Rising, who were putting in that work to make these people household names for years before we came along. But it felt like, we'd been working on this for 5 years. We were trying to get this out to people for the last 5 years, and it seemed like it was finally clicking, and everything was
Yeah.
on all cylinders. And we, a place like Black Sheep, which is owned by Steve Gedra, who had a very tiny restaurant called Bistro Europa for a couple of years that was like the cool kid hangout. Like that was the restaurant that all the chefs ate at. And he opened up a much bigger restaurant, Black Sheep, and this was kind of like, uh, everyone was like, okay, this is going to be a bellwether. Like, is the public going to come out for this? That everybody's been talking about how cool it is for the last 3 years. And sure enough, it was. I mean, the restaurant was packed. The brunch is still one of the hardest seats to get in town.
Yeah, it was just there
And
this past week.
yeah,
For
and,
lunch.
and it, yeah, and it felt great to see that kind of finally come to fruition. Um, and so yeah, I mean, the irony is, 2015 was our biggest year at the blog. We were over a couple million views for the year.
Wow.
We had just done an award show at the end of the year where we had about like 10 staff writers, and we went into my basement and we came up with our version of like year-end awards. So it was like anything from what's the best restaurant to who's the nicest chef in Buffalo to uh, what restaurant that was visited by Guy Fieri is the best restaurant in 2015. Like just really dumb. Like it was a mix of like taking things super seriously and also being just super dumb and fun about it. Um, and that was huge. And I was at 2015. We were like, wow, this like maybe this could be a business for us. Like, long shot. Maybe we could actually get a big enough audience that we can make some money. Um, and then in I did a little bit of a career change the next year, and me and my wife found out that we were pregnant with our daughter,
Okay.
and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, "There's no way in hell." Like our free time was running out, and so we basically shut down the website in 2016, in the middle of the most crazy restaurant time in Buffalo, um, but we left all the social media open. We left Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We left all those accounts active because we thought maybe we'll come back and do something. Um, but for our website, we just shut it down. And the irony is that what took off bigger than our website was like Instagram.
Hmm.
We're up to 40,000 followers on Instagram, and or getting close, I should say, and that's by far, every person I meet that has heard Buffalo Eats, they know us because of Instagram or Twitter at this point. So um, we kept the brand going, but we decided the website, the day to day running of that website, it was too much. So
Yeah.
um, I feel like I rambled on there a little bit, but
No, you're good. I mean, no, I think it's important. I mean, for obviously a couple of people, obviously anyone from Buffalo to kind of know that because you're right. I feel like a lot of people follow now and just see it at might only know it as the Instagram, but it's also a testament, I guess, to you and like as someone who does media or is trying to do media on my own. Obviously, I listen
yeah,
to how brands evolve and how people kind of stay relevant. And to go from 2009 to now and still be relevant in any anything really is really like an accomplishment. I mean, I think
thank
it's
you.
so
I
cool.
really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's an 11, like you said, 11-year run so far, and people are still following on Instagram, and people are still excited about the stuff you put out. I mean, I don't know. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
So
I mean that has been something that we've kind of. I want to say there was a grand plan behind that, but it was a lot of figuring things out on the fly, um, and it was a lot of kind of working around things. I don't have time to. Me and my wife, unfortunately, don't go out to eat as much as we want to because of this pandemic, and b, a 3.5-year-old daughter who is not a foodie yet. Fingers crossed, but still just wants chicken nuggets. But so we had to figure out ways to keep it active, and one of the ways was we just started bringing on contributors for our Instagram account, and we have about 10 now, and it's people that are essentially handpicked by me. It's people who I trusted their tastes, and I trusted, and it's people who always want to go to see the new thing, which is important.
Yeah.
And it's just people who've reached out to us over the years who asked if they could join the team. And I want to maybe get more voices on there, and more perspectives. That's something that I think would be super helpful. But having 10 people on there means that basically every other day there's an Instagram posting, and that keeps our account active. And the way that I unfortunately, we don't make any money on anything, but any of the rare comp things that come across our table, I try to divvy it out amongst the contributors to say thank you, because they're buying all those meals with their own money for the most part. So that's how we kind of make it work.
Yeah, I mean it's cool. And I understand the idea of kind of putting your work in, and not monetarily wise, not getting a lot of reward. Obviously, Lango's class is
Yeah.
somewhat new, so I don't even think I've made $100 off of this page, but I love it either way. It's so much fun to do every week. It's something that I'm very passionate about. But yeah, kind of going back to the other idea of the farms in Buffalo. We're
Yeah.
notorious for our winters. We're notorious for just sometimes being a brutal place to live, and that's kind of how I always saw it as well. And I, coming from this area, I also do know a lot of picky eaters as well. But seeing the farm recognition, like going to the farmers market, for me in the area is just amazing. It's like the highlight of my weekends now. Ross always took me when I worked at Oliver's. He would always take me on the weekends. And we would go early in the morning to get our food from all the farmers, and that was like those moments were some of the best because I got to see like the people who were providing food for us, and I'd always get a butter block Pop Tart, so that was like a added bonus. But
Nice.
seeing like obviously like with what we're known for, how important do you think it was for like the farms to get recognized and for people to get excited about that? Because it's like I said, it's a hard climate to be in regardless, but to like
Yeah.
have these farms active year round in terms of their presence, how important, or do you, like, what was the value in that, in your opinion?
I I, I mean I feel like I've mentioned this like on a blog post or something, but the mission statement of Buffalo Eats like always changed. So at first it was like just stop going to chain restaurants, and then it was hey, you should know some of these people behind in the kitchens that are making everything for you. And by the end of it, by 2015, we were just like championing like local farmers. That was like our main passion, and it still is to a degree. Like me and my wife still absolutely love going to farmers markets. We love anytime we can go to a farm and visit a really great either produce or a lamb farm or a couple of the cattle farms. Like those are my favorite places to this day, and a lot of people in Buffalo don't. I want way more now than they did, but still, a lot of people in Buffalo don't realize how much great produce and protein, I guess, is raised in this area.
Hmm.
And people still bulk at prices. If you want to get a properly raised, hog or lamb or beef, it's not going to be cheap. It's not going to compete
Yeah.
against Aldi's or Wegmans. But I think what we're starting to see is more people understand that, and more people look for that on menus now. And that was something that really came to me and my wife later on as we were running the blog. But it's still something to this day that any chance I get that I can promote any of those farms, I think it's super important. And you're right. Excuse me. Our growing season is incredibly limited.
Hmm.
We're not California. We get strawberries 2 weeks a year, and you better enjoy those strawberries for that 2 weeks. Um,
Yeah.
and but we, there's places who are making do. The urban farming community in Buffalo is stunning to see what these people are doing in the heart of the east side and the west side of Buffalo, with greens and you name it, pretty much anything they can. The one farm in the west side has a little tilapia farm, built right into
Really?
their setup. Yeah,
That's
Massachusetts
cool.
Ave project. Um, I mean, last I remember, I think 2 years ago, yeah, they were actually raising tilapia, right on premise. So I think it's important to show people that these things exist, and that it might cost a little bit more, but it tastes so much better. That people, you realize people have never had a ripe strawberry or a real good tomato, or just a good egg. I always tell people, like, just start with the egg. Like, that's when you that like an egg is such a simple way to try something properly raised and grown, and immediately tell the difference on how much better it is. And everybody loves eggs, so that's always my gateway for people who don't think they appreciate that kind of stuff, and roll their eyes when you tell them that you know the animals are treated well, and I don't even want to say organic farming, but farmers who are doing the right things to raise animals or produce, and you get your uncle or aunt, they rolls your eyes and be like, yeah, okay, sure. um, but you put a really good egg in front of somebody, and they can't deny that it tastes a million times better than whatever the hell they're getting.
I agree. I mean, just recently, this past week at the market, I got strawberries from Ertl Farms, and just incredible food. My
Yeah.
family was, you know, they're like, they're tasting these. They're like, these are really good. Where'd you get these from? I'm like, oh, those are from the farmers market. And they're like, oh wow. I'm like, we gotta go, and my grandma actually wants to go this next week. But
Nice. That's
yeah,
always the
but
best feeling. Is and anytime, the one feeling that's never changed over the last 11 years is introducing somebody to something new, either a cuisine or a restaurant or a dish, and having them come back and tell you that, like, they really loved it. That is still, like, one of my favorite feelings. 11 years in, still to this day, is introducing people new things that they love. Like, that is just like the best part of it.
yeah, I mean, especially in the city, like I totally get that. Having friends come from college to visit on holidays, or siblings of friends come to visit and like want to know what Buffalo's about, and people that like I'm good friends with now that really don't know what's in the city, like taking them to the farmers market, going to a fine dining restaurant, going to Casa Azul to sit outside and have a taco. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different it's so cool to kind of it's so awesome to have my like know what it's in my city, and I don't know everything. There's so many places I haven't gone to, but to
Right.
know what the city's capable of, and then to show people that it's like I don't know, like you said, it's one of the best feelings in the world.
Yeah, I work for a pretty large bank, and occasionally we have people come into our office from out of town, and I sent two people from New York City to Dubutsu, the one night when they were in town, and they both, like, came back and, like, could not believe the quality of the meal they had. They were, like, raving, and these are two people who work in New York City, have definitely had their fair share of really good restaurant experiences, but were, like, floored by this meal they had, and like, that's all they talked about for the week that they were here, and I felt so good. It's one of the. I mean, it's kind of the Buffalo thing in us. It's we're the underdogs, and we feel like nobody properly respects us. And then when somebody finally kind of shows some appreciation, it's like the best feeling in the world. So
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is that underdog mentality, and I have I guess, a point to that in a little bit, but I do want to ask you quickly about, or not quickly, but I do want to ask you about the Instagram in terms of, I really think like, you capture that mentality, or you capture like the spirit of Buffalo, and the thing that I saw that I really liked, and it's I don't know like I don't know how much work was put into it, but the Never Ranch like branding. If you could explain that and kind of how you thought of that, because I think that's it fits so many in so many ways. What a Buffalo food person is about. So if you could
Yeah.
just explain that.
So yeah, I would say that that is definitely. So I came up with that idea. My sister in law is a graphic designer. She's pretty much made everything that we've ever put on Buffalo Eats. Our logos, our design. She's her name's Lauren Siriani. She has a very amazing Etsy shop that does great wooden signs. Um, to get a plug. But so the Never Ranch, we were just trying to think of a way. Every year we have a Ride for Roswell team, which for people who are not familiar is a big cancer fundraiser for the city of Buffalo for Roswell Park, which is a really great cancer institute. And every year we would sell T-shirts or something to raise money for our team. And last year I was like running out of ideas. I was like, how many different ways can we make our logo? Um, and then I just started thinking about. I think we had a wing tournament or something, and or no, you know what it was? They were gonna have ranch. They announced they're gonna have ranch servings stations at the Wing Festival, and like the city of Buffalo like threw a fit, um, and I thought it was really funny. And I was like, what if we did like a never ranch? I was trying to think of like an anti ranch tattoo art like idea that potentially could get or sell. And then spitballing back and forth with my sister-in-law, we came up with the Never Ranch logo, which is a chicken wing drum with like the tattoo ribbon Never Ranch in front of it. Um, and we, it's just one of those things where I know it's ridiculous. I can separate myself from it, from people who are outside of Buffalo who are like, why do you care so much about blue cheese and ranch? And part of me is like, you just have blue cheese with wings. Like, that's just what you do. And then another
Yeah.
part of me is like, they're both basically mayo with just slightly different seasonings. Like, I can also understand how ridiculous it is, but we leaned into it, and that's kind of the other Buffalo Eats thing. We never take ourselves too seriously. So sure, I'm going to sell a shirt that says Never Ranch with a wing on it, and I will say that is by far the highest selling thing we've ever made. We sold, I think, 300 shirts last year, so we raised about like $1,500 for our team. And then
Jeez.
this year, when I was like, I'm just gonna make stickers. It'll be easier, more people will buy them. It'll be cheaper, blah blah blah. And we sold 1,000 stickers in
Wow.
about 2 months. First for the Ride for Oswald team, and then when the pandemic hit, a GoFundMe was started for Western New York restaurant employees, and so we pivoted and we were like, everything that we're selling now goes to the restaurant employees, and I think literally in a 4 week span, I sold 500 stickers,
Jesus.
just like that, and like people like buying them all over. It was like people from Arizona who were like, I can't wait to show this to my friends who don't get it. There's like a woman on an army base who was like super excited to show it. I sent those stickers like literally across the United States to people from Buffalo who could not wait to proudly display it to their neighbors who didn't understand it. But yeah, it really took off. It's by far the number one thing we've ever made.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I
Yeah,
mean, they're so cool, and it's such just a cool design. And I agree with you how it is silly, but I am also very serious about the blue cheese and wing combination. And friends at college, I would be at this Premier Culinary Institute yelling at people about eating chicken wings with ranch at Buffalo Wild Wings after an exam. So
yes, it's yeah. I fully understand it's ridiculous, but I will not let in. Like people on Twitter or something will give us, don't be a jerk. If people want to eat their wings with ranch, who cares? And a rational person would be like, yeah, whatever you eat, it's fine. But I refuse. I was like, I'm sorry. Like this is the hill I'm dying on. You cannot eat chicken wings with ranch. It's I don't know. I at this point I've just leaned into it, and I probably will eventually get that as a tattoo at some point in my life.
that's awesome. Um, yeah, great. Well, I have a few questions left. One more serious, and then the other one not as serious. So, leading more
Sure.
so with the serious question. Obviously, like you were saying before, there's so many great chefs, so many great producers in the area, so many great restaurants, and even with COVID-19, there's still seeing the people in the industry, in the food industry in Buffalo, kind of pivot and make the most of it, and you know, just keep putting out great service. I mean, it really is inspiring. It really is something, that I'm proud to say that I am from Buffalo, and as someone who, hopes to contribute to the city in some way as I progress my career. But for people who might be on the or might not really know, or who are listening and they're from Buffalo, maybe they're a chef from Buffalo, maybe they're interested in food, but they never really saw their city in that way. What's your argument for the city of Buffalo in terms of it being like, the great dining destination that we both know it is?
I would say what has really changed in the last 10 years or so has been that Buffalo started to retain talent. Um, there was a period of time where you mentioned it right at the beginning. If you're a young cook, you were going like and I'm not even talking about culinary school. I'm talking about your formative years working as a line cook in other cities. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you were coming up in Buffalo and you were really serious about being a chef, you were going to go. Like you were going to go to New York City, you were going to go to Boston, you were going to go wherever, because those are where the really talented chefs were. And what I think changed a little bit is that we started retaining more and more of those cooks who have become really good local chefs. And there was maybe a handful of great chefs in the area who were doing things, and I think that number has increased. And I think from what before it was you could only get a really good meal in a certain area of downtown. It's now you can get a really good meal in pretty much any area of Western New York at this point. Um, and that you're never that far away from anything. I mean, you know, I just think I think across the United States the level of cooking has gone up in the last 10 years. People are every town that you see has a resurgence. It's usually tied to restaurants or breweries, and Buffalo's no different. But I really think that the talent we have in the city could really hold up against any other city our size and slightly bigger. I mean, we really are have a really special scene, and that's very collaborative, and chefs that are trying to work together to build a scene. These aren't chefs that are backstabbing each other and shitting on each other's restaurants and behind their backs and stuff like that. It generally seems like a town of people who are working together to really put us on the map.
Yeah, I agree. And what would you say to someone who, has, I guess, you in 2009, someone who is really excited about what they're seeing in the city and wants to cover it? What would your advice be for, maybe reaching out to chefs? Because it is not a tight knit circle, but you know, there's a lot of people out there, and it might be intimidating to start to reach out to any one of them. And I know from
Yeah.
meeting a lot of the chefs here, they're more than willing to talk and share their stories. They want to do that. So, what's your advice for maybe someone who wants to cover food media specifically in the Buffalo area?
Um, I mean, I think it, it's very easy to just think you can start an Instagram account and run with it.
Yes.
Every day there's a new Buffalo Food something Instagram account that is following us and asking for a follow back. And I admire it. And some of them, take off and some of them don't. Um, I mean, it's all about how much you're willing to put in to start. Back when blogs were a thing and a new food blog would pop up every now and then, my only advice would be just don't stop. Like you got to put in 3 months, and this at least this was blog speak. You got to put in 3 months every week and keep going with it because it's not going to take off the first week. You got to really put
Mm-hmm.
the time into it. Um, and I guess the same with coverage now. I mean, it's really hard. I don't know who and wants to read things about food at this point. I wish more people did, but I feel like starting a blog in 2020 is probably not going to happen. But if you're going to do the Instagram route, you gotta find a way to differentiate yourself because there are literally dozens and dozens of people trying to just post pictures of food that they have at restaurants.
Yeah.
So and also it's just quality. I will fully admit, we could do way better with the photo quality that we have of our pictures. But if somebody's taking just garbage photos with a flash, and thinking that people are going to really start to take it, pay attention to it, people just have higher standards for that kind of stuff now, especially with the way cameras have gotten. You got to put that extra effort into it. You got to try to make it look professional, even though it's not. And then but just really try to differentiate yourself. I mean, that's the hardest thing. There's like a billion of these I see literally every day, and I just wonder like who like I don't know. I'm fortunate that we did our hard work 10 years ago, and I don't have to worry about that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I mean, yeah, like, even with Line Cook Thoughts only being a year and a half old, I see it all the time now. Like, as you start to amass a following of people starting, and I would agree with you. The same thing. Like, obviously quality has to be there, and just substance of content has to be there, and it has to feel genuine. Like I think with Buffalo Eats, it really feels genuine that you want to go out and eat at these places, and you want to support the community. And I think that's a big thing. Is just, you know, it's believable, and so whatever it is, you have to like really be passionate about it. Um,
Yeah, and I think, and maybe I'm telling myself this mentally to try to make myself feel better, but I feel like you can tell when the accounts are in it for the free stuff. Like you can tell when
yeah,
somebody's creating an account because they want to get free food, and when they get those free coverages, you can tell it's like the most like just like not genuine thoughts on anything that they're writing about. And I'd like to say that Buffalo Eats has always been fairly genuine with how our opinions, and if we ever get the rare free thing, we always explicitly say it, or at least tell people that we were invited to this meal. This meal was provided to us, something like that. You know, but I think we might be alone in those type of ethical standards. And I like to tell myself that the accounts that are just blatant about it, people see through that, and then they just don't become really anything special. So that's what I tell myself to sleep at night when I see like people just getting like ridiculous amounts of free shit, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? But
yeah, I
I
must be
guess
doing
that's how.
something wrong because I really
Yeah,
don't
right.
get that much free. I've
Yeah.
gotten some stuff, and I'm grateful for that. But um,
No, and I think you have to really position yourself in a way that makes it very clear to people that I'm never going to post anything even remotely controversial on this account. We have no problem saying when something's not good. I mean, we're not out here to shit on restaurants when that's not our goal. But if something's really bad, or a chef or somebody in the industry does something really, that rubs us the wrong way, um, we are very much we have no problem calling it out when we see fit. And maybe that has taken us off of lists for free stuff, but I'm more than fine with that.
awesome. All right, great. Well, yeah. I mean, I had one. I guess I have a couple small Buffalo related questions to kind of end the show.
Okay,
Just
I'll
some
try to.
stuff
I'm
that.
sorry, I keep rambling. I'll try to keep them short.
No, no, you're good. I mean, I don't have a time frame at all. No, but these are some things that I kind of wanted to ask you. You running Buffalo Eats. The
Sure.
first one being, is beef on weck overrated?
I actually think it's underrated, if you were to ask me, but I can see why it's overrated. This is like a 180 from what I used to think, because I at one point thought beef on weck was overrated and was garbage. But what I've come to realize is that every family party in Buffalo eventually has a party where there's a beef on weck station with a
Yes.
tray of way overcooked beef and just stale rolls. And in that scenario, yes, it's overrated because that's a shitty way to experience it. But if you go to a place like Barbill or Glen Park Tavern and you have a freshly carved, rare, or not rare, but like medium rare beef on weck, um, it is like an eye-opening experience. So when you can find a good one, they're underrated. But for the most part, there's mostly shitty versions. So I would say both. If
Okay.
now that I'm coming down to it, it is both overrated and underrated.
All right. I don't want. This is gonna be a tough one. Favorite wing spot, and I don't want it to be like this. I guess necessarily being the best, but I guess one that you've enjoyed recently.
I mean,
or the one that you
that
go
one's
back
easy.
to?
It's 911 Tavern for me. 911 Tavern is a tiny, tiny bar in South Buffalo. It's a cash only bar. It's run by, I think he's a retired fireman, who is the only person allowed in the kitchen every service. He's the only person who knows what's in his sauce. It is the most unique wing sauce I've ever had, but it's also the most delicious wing sauce I've ever had. And still to this day, it feels like a regulars only place, even though I've tried everything I could to hype this business up over the last 10 years. Um, they are still somehow maintaining that, like, not a tourist spot. So 911 Tavern. And people would say, like, why the hell is it named after 9/11? The building it's in was two separate buildings, 9 and 11 Bloomfield, and they, like, literally just joined the buildings together, and so that's hence the name. I think they started in like 1986, so obviously way before any
Yeah,
horrible events happened. But it's weird when I tell people who are from like New York City to go to 9/11 Tavern, and they're very, very confused.
yeah, I imagine. Thanks for sharing that. More fulfilling snack: pizza logs or wavy chips and bison dip.
Man, that's a good one. Bison dip is underrated, but I will say I would probably go pizza logs. They are just something uniquely special about like Buffalo pub food that I mean our pub food really gives people a run for their money with like caloric intake, and I think that is one of those shining examples of how we took what is arguably some of the most unhealthy pizza in the country and like somehow made it even worse. I
Yeah,
mean, worse for you, not worse in
yeah,
tasting, but
yeah.
like,
Now I know what you mean.
it is something that is just like uniquely Buffalo that I absolutely love.
All right. Favorite pizza in the city is my last food-based question.
That one is tough. I mean the go to answer is Imperial, which is probably a favorite answer for a lot of people. I would say Imperial is probably like my birthday pizza if I could treat myself to something that I don't have normally. Something that I have probably more regularly would be Nino's, but their West Seneca location, because they have two locations, one in Hamburg, one in West Seneca. I have no idea why, but the West Seneca location is like 20 times better. And that one's probably like my runner up. So I'd say Imperial and Nino's.
Awesome. And then last ridiculous Buffalo-based question that only people from our city will understand. Um, who is more likely to win a championship first, the Bills or the Sabres?
I think we're pretty obvious right now. uh, yeah, that might have been a more difficult question 18 months ago. Yeah, I mean it's the Bills.
Right.
I am a Sabres fan first. I have a tattoo of Dominik Hasek on my arm, um, but I have to admit that the Sabres seem like they're still another 10 years away from even thinking about it.
Awesome. Thank you for those questions. I only bring out the rapid fire questions once in a while, so I had to ask you
I
some
I
Buffalo related
appreciate
ones.
it. I
Yeah, of
appreciate it.
course. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. With Line Cook Thoughts, the audience is Line Cook Nation, group of chef cooks, people in the industry looking to connect. And now that you've been on, what does it mean for you to be a part of this show and this community?
Thank you so much, Ray. I know we've talked probably for months about this. I'm honored to be on here. I've watched you interview a whole bunch of people over the year, and really some super impressive names with really impressive resumes. So I'm honored to be included in that list, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And, before we end, just thank you for showcasing Buffalo. I mean, without your podcast, the one day when I remember vividly cutting grass, about to go work with Ross, and I, realized there were all these people and all these chefs doing all these great things. Without discovering that, I don't know if I would have had the same, I guess, excitement to go look for those things and kind of just be so impressed with all the great people in the city. So thank you for the work you do, and yeah, it was an honor to have you on.
Thanks, man. That means so much hearing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. All right, we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.